On behalf of the chairman, Senator Warner.
Thank you, Senator Rounds. And I think Mr. Pulte just kind of maybe put the core of everything we're talking about. You know, I'm for getting rid of useless regulations as well. But the question is, what are useless regulations? And I think they're legitimate areas we can disagree on. And I hate to kind of follow on my friend Senator Tillis, but Mr. McKiernan, I enjoyed our conversation. And let me say for the record, you know, I've enjoyed working with you, particularly during your time with Senator Corker. I thought you were fair. I thought you had a reasonable approach. I don't question your qualifications. Also worked with you with Senator Toomey. I do want to echo something you said, and I hope you'll reconfirm in our conversation, that you didn't have a complete, you know, the way some of my colleagues think that everything the prior leadership did at the CFPB did somehow was bad, that you did think that some of the predecessor policies like the data broker rules and privacy issues, CFPB had acted accordingly.
Well, Senator, one thing I do commend Director Chopra on was his work to increase our attention on some of the very significant policy issues posed by data collection, whether it's data aggregators, data brokers, and you know there's privacy issues here. There's potentially national security issues here. And I think it's important that we, both in the regulated space and in the rest of our elected officials, continue to focus on this as these entities are collecting more and more data and the analytics get more and more powerful. There's some real policy issues here, and I think Director Chopra was on to something by focusing on
and I hope, again, that comment that not everything bad in the last administration, not everything the last administration touched, even at CFPB, was bad, will not cost you votes on the majority side. But I do have to tell you, and Senator Reid was getting at this, I got folks that are terrified. I had a lady call the other day, didn't know whether she'd get money out of her bank anymore because of fear of consumer protections. I had somebody who had her mom scammed for $80,000. I am hugely afraid of OMB Director Vought's attempt to, frankly, terrorize, traumatize the federal workforce. And you know, Senator Reid gave the question. I'll give you a chance to answer it. You know, you're an independent agency. I remember very well how you were created, and it was a negotiation with then Senator Shelby, and it was frankly our Republican friends who said, "Let's not have it a new agency. Let's put it under the funding cycle of the Fed." But are you going to be able to stand up to Director Vought? You got to enforce the law.
Senator, I'm going to enforce the law. That's my commitment to you. That means performing each of the statutorily assigned responsibilities for the CFPB. And I will just say that, you know, I think my record speaks to my willingness to assert my point of view, and I'm not going to be, you know.
Well, again, but this is going to be the nub. I share Senator Warren's view that, you know, nobody elected Elon Musk and his Doge bros, but you're going to have to stand up to this. You know, and would you acknowledge again? And Senator Warren may have missed this, where the nominee actually acknowledged that under Director Chopra, good things occasionally happened. But we also at least acknowledge that, you know, that the $20 billion returned to 195 million consumers was actually a good record for the CFPB?
Well, Senator, I think it's important that we have redress to consumers. I think it's important that bad actors, repeat offenders, do have. How
about I go to the Tom Tillis mode? That's a yes or no question? $20 billion back to consumers across America, good or bad?
Senator, I don't think we should evaluate the success of the CFPB based on dollar numbers or enforcement count. That's like evaluating an official based on the number of fouls he calls during the game. We should evaluate the game on whether it's fair. We should evaluate the CFPB director based on whether we have fair.
You're going the wrong direction.
Markets.
It bothers me if you can't say $20 billion back to American consumers based upon illicit activity. And listen, I'm, you know, notoriously viewed as way too pro-banker on my side of the aisle. But you should. Let me just give you a little bit. Let me just give you a little coaching here. When my Republican colleagues tried desperately to get the ODNI director to acknowledge that Edward Snowden was a traitor, and the nominee couldn't bring herself to say those words. Think about that, and then getting $20 billion back in rebates to American consumers, good or bad?
Senator, it is very important that we have customer redress as part of the remedies. That's one important just in its own right. You've got to make customers whole when they're harmed. You also have to keep the playing field level across market participants. And if bad actors are able to keep ill-gotten gains, then that gives them a competitive advantage.
Just say yes.
Restitution is good, but I am not going to get in the practice of evaluating the success of the Bureau based on dollar numbers.
But the way we measure, yeah, I agree. The number of fouls called is not. But if there is a process, do you think part of that $20 billion was inappropriately returned? Were the institutions cheated out of that money?
On restitution, I'm not aware of any that was.
Okay, so then the answer would be yes. I just would like one last. I didn't get to you, Mr. Pulte, on we talked about GSE reform, and Mr. McKiernan it is a gnarly issue. Do not do this quickly for a tax paid for the reconciliation bill. If we're going to do an explicit guarantee, it's got to be paid for. Last point, I appreciate Senator Rounds, and there was a minute and a half given back. That was not given
I
back.
noticed.
I'm not going to go the whole minute and a
You're
half.
pushing it a little bit,
but I would just
getting
refer
some ability here. So,
Mr. McKiernan, as you look at the CFPB and you look at adequate staffing and right sizing, I would go back again to the Inspector General. Inspector General, what's this, 30 seconds. Inspector General concluded after the Signature Bank collapse that one of the reasons the FDIC screwed up in delays in supervisory activities was because there were shortfalls in terms of personnel at the agency. I hope you would take that lesson from the OIG at FDIC in your current job before you go willy-nilly and look at the workforce at the CFPB and bring the chainsaw approach. Thank you.
and with that, Senator Kennedy.